Okay, lastly, in summary, okay, how can we perform the detailed design for shell and tube? Okay, this is I refer from the chemical engineering design principle, practice and economy of plant and process design by Elsevier. So you may refer to this book as well. Okay, the first step is you need to have a specification on the properties involved in the heat design heat exchanger. Define the duty based from the energy balance, make the energy balance if needed to calculate unspecified flow rate or the temperature. And second step is to collect the physical properties for each particular fluid involved in the heat exchanger design, such as the density, the thermal conductivity, the maybe required the viscosity, or the required properties that involved in the calculation. And then the next step is assume the overall coefficient. Okay, the overall coefficient can be either you refer to the table or refer to the diagram. That from the table, example, if we have the range of from 500 to 1000, how can you obtain the overall or estimate the overall coefficient by multiply, example, the range from 500 to 1000. So you can take the average plus 500 plus 1000 divided by 2. So this is your first assumption of the overall coefficient. Okay, the next step is to decide the number of shell and tube passes. This is important for you to determine the correction factor if you use the diagram, or otherwise you may use your calculation to calculate the log mean temperature. And then the next step is to determine the heat transfer area required using this equation, because we have the information on the overall coefficient and also delta T and the Q from the energy balance. And then the next step is to decide the type, tube size, material out, and the assigned fluid to shell or tube assigned. So refer to the general design consideration to decide or to allocate the fluid, whether in shell and tube side. And then the next step is to calculate the number of tube, and then followed by calculate the shell diameter and estimate the tube side heat transfer coefficient. And you may proceed to the decide buffer spacing. Okay, you may refer this information from the general design. The buffer spacing, we have the range of the buffer spacing based on the shell diameter. And also you need to estimate the shell side heat transfer coefficient. And then after that, we may calculate the overall heat transfer coefficient by consider all the tube and also shell heat transfer coefficient, the dirt falling rate, or we call as the resistance or the heat transfer resistance in our calculation, and you may compare with the calculated to the assumption value we make in the step 3. If less than 30%, the error is less than 30%, you may proceed to the pressure drop, or otherwise you need to define or redefine the overall coefficient. And then after that, we follow the same step until we can obtain the error, a percentage error is less than 30%. And then after that, calculate the, estimate the pressure drop. If within the specification, you may stop your calculation, and then later we're gonna proceed to the estimate the cost of heat exchanger in cost, capital cost estimation. And then we can finally we can accept the design. So these are the summary how can we perform the detailed design in heat exchanger that specifically focus on the shell and tube.